Hey everyone! Today we are looking at some of history's most shocking and famous socialites. From secret rumors to giant scandals, these are stories full of tricks, secrets, and chaos that changed their worlds. Our first story starts in England in the late 1700s. Sophie Dawes was born on September 29, 1790. She grew up in a very poor family on a small island. Her father was a fisherman who often got into trouble, and she was one of 10 children. Things were so hard that Sophie had to collect tiny sea snails from the beach just to help her family eat. She and her siblings even spent time in a workhouse. These were places where poor people were given a bed and food, but they had to work very hard all day. Sadly, 6 of Sophie's brothers and sisters died while they were still children. When she was a teenager, Sophie worked as a maid before moving to the big city of London. In London, she worked making hats and selling oranges. Even when things were tough, Sophie was a survivor who knew how to make the best of a bad situation.
In the early 1800s, Europe was at war because of the French Revolution. London was full of French nobles who had run away from the fighting. Sophie eventually met a rich man named Louis Henry, the Duke of Bourbon. He was one of the wealthiest men in Europe. The Duke won a card game against 2 other men to decide who would get to be Sophie's friend.
By 1811, the Duke was paying for a nice house for Sophie and her mother. Because he was a royal and she was a commoner, they kept their relationship a secret. Sophie used this time to study languages and philosophy so she could fit in with high society. In 1814, the wars ended and the French nobles went back to Paris. Sophie followed the Duke there. To make her look official at the royal court, the Duke arranged for her to marry a soldier named Adrian. The Duke even gave her a title, the Baroness de Fouché. Her new husband didn't know the truth. He thought she was the Duke's daughter. Eventually, her husband found out the secret and left her. When the King of France heard about the lies, he kicked Sophie out of the court and called her a street girl. But Sophie didn't give up. She stayed close to the Duke and pressured him into leaving her a giant fortune in his will. When the Duke was found dead in 1830, many people thought Sophie had killed him to get his money. No one ever proved it, and she died a very rich woman in 1840. Now we head to Italy. Virginia Oldoini was born in 1837 in Florence. She was from a noble family, and everyone said she was the most beautiful girl in Italy. People called her the Pearl of Italy. Her parents hoped her beauty would help her find a rich husband. When she was 16, she married a count. Even though she didn't love him, the marriage gave her a title and lots of money. Soon, she moved to the city of Turin. At this time, Italy was trying to become one big country, and Virginia's cousin was the prime minister. He had a secret plan. He wanted Virginia to go to Paris and charm the Emperor of France, Napoleon III, so he would help Italy in a war. In 1856, Virginia went to Paris and quickly became the emperor's mistress. While she was at the fancy palace, she was actually a secret agent, sending reports back to Italy. She became famous for her amazing costumes, like her Queen of Hearts dress. She was very beautiful, but she was also very vain. She once wrote that even God was surprised by how perfect she was. Her time in Paris ended when someone tried to kill the emperor while he was visiting her. A big scandal broke out, and she had to leave. However, her mission worked. France helped Italy win a war against Austria. Later, Virginia became one of the world's first supermodels by working with a famous photographer to take hundreds of artistic pictures. As Virginia got older, her life became sad. Her husband and her only son both died. She lost her beauty and couldn't stand the sight of herself. She moved into a dark apartment in Paris and painted all the walls black. She destroyed every mirror so she wouldn't have to see her old face. She only went outside at night, wearing a thick veil. She died in 1899 at the age of 62. After she passed away, people became fascinated by her photos again. Today, her pictures are kept in big museums like the Met in New York. She is remembered as a woman who used her beauty to change history. Finally, we have the story of Evelyn Kaine. She was born in Wisconsin in the late 1880s. Her family was well off, and she grew up to be a school teacher. Her life seemed normal until she met a millionaire named Charles on a hunting trip. They fell in love and got married. They had a daughter and a perfect life, but then Evelyn got very sick. She had a major surgery, and afterward, her personality completely changed. She became cold and distant. In 1907, she suddenly vanished, leaving her 5-year-old daughter behind.
Evelyn reappeared in Chicago, living a double life under a fake name. She had become obsessed with stories about criminals. While staying at a hotel, she met a man she thought was a real crook, and she felt a strange thrill. She began pretending to be a maid to get jobs in the houses of rich families. But she wasn't there to clean, she was there to learn their secrets. In the bitter January of 1945, Evelyn Kaine sat in her high-backed velvet chair on the ghost floor of the Silver Tower. At 80 years old, her hair was as white as the snow swirling outside her window. She didn't die in a hospital, and she didn't die in fear. She died holding a fountain pen, having just signed the last document in her vast ledger. As the clock struck midnight, her heart simply stopped, a quiet mechanical failure in a woman who had operated like a Swiss watch for decades.